Good evening and welcome to Courts Today by Live Law. I am Urvashi Chauhan, and in this video we will highlight some important legal developments, including questions raised about delay in forensic reports linked to Manipur violence and a sharp rebuke to a Bihar IPS officer for supporting a murder convict. We also cover court's remarks to Rahul Gandhi over his China statement, the Tamil Nadu government's challenge to a High Court order on welfare scheme, and the Banke Bihari temple ordinance issue. Make sure to watch till the end and do not forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. In an important update, the Supreme Court today expressed serious concern over the unexplained delay in submitting a forensic science laboratory report on audio tips allegedly implicating former Manipur Chief Minister N. Biren Singh in the state's prolonged ethnic violence. The audio recordings in question allegedly feature the voice of Biren Singh reportedly discussing matters linked to the ethnic unrest in Manipur. These clips surfaced over a year ago and triggered serious public and legal concern. A petition was filed by the Kuki Organization for Human Rights Trust seeking a court-monitored investigation into the matter. Earlier this year, the Central Forensic Science Laboratory did submit a report, but the Supreme Court found it unsatisfactory and called a fresh analysis. It has now been over 3 months since the court had ordered that fresh report, and yet there is no clarity on its status. Appearing before a bench of Justice Sanjay Kumar and Justice Satish Chandra Sharma, Advocate Prashant Bhushan for the petitioner today flagged the prolonged delay and the centre's apparent inaction. The counsel appearing for Solicitor General Tushar Mehta requested 2 more weeks, but the court was not convinced. Justice Kumar questioned whether the forensic lab had given the report or if it was still in the pipeline. When informed that the report was still awaited, Justice Kumar questioned the efficiency of the process. Well, the bench decided to pass over the matter for Solicitor General Mehta to appear. However, the matter was not taken up again today. You already know that this issue comes amid a broader backdrop of ethnic violence in Manipur, which began nearly 2 years ago. In February, President's rule was imposed in the state, and just days earlier, Biren Singh had resigned as the Chief Minister. In a rare and scathing rebuke, the Supreme Court has taken strong exception to the conduct of a senior Bihar police officer for filing an affidavit that contradicted his own department's case and supported the accused in a murder conviction. The court said that it is high time that such casual and irresponsible actions by top police officers are called out, especially when they risk undermining the justice system. A bench of justices Ehsanuddin Amanullah and S.V.N. Bhatti issued a show cause notice to Ashok Mishra IPS, who was then serving as the Superintendent of Police in Samastipur, Bihar. The court was shocked to learn that Mishra had filed a counter affidavit before the Supreme Court supporting the accused, even though the state police had previously investigated the matter, filed a charge sheet, and secured a conviction for the murder of the petitioner's husband. Calling it a serious breach of responsibility, the court noted that the officer had taken a stand in 3 separate paragraphs of his affidavit that effectively gave a clean chit to the convict. This was entirely at odds with the state's official position. The court refused to accept his claim of human error and observed that either he failed to read the affidavit entirely, which would amount to gross negligence, or he knowingly submitted it in support of the accused, a serious misconduct. Well, the bench has now directed Ashok Mishra to personally appear before the court and submit his explanation on 19th August, warning that strict action may be taken for his conduct. This case came up while the court was hearing an appeal by the wife of the murder victim who had challenged the Patna High Court's decision to suspend the sentence of the convicts. In the next update, the top court has stayed the criminal defamation proceedings against leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi over remarks he made about the Indian Army in context of the 2020 Galwan clash with China. However, while granting interim relief, the court also made strong oral observations criticizing Gandhi's comments. The defamation complaint was filed by former Border Roads Organization Director Uday Shankar Srivastava in a Lucknow MP MLA court. It pertains to remarks made by Rahul Gandhi during a press interaction in the Bharat Jodo Yatra on 16th December 2022, referencing the Galwan Valley clash and a face-off in Arunachal Pradesh on 9th December. The complaint alleges that Gandhi made repeated derogatory statements suggesting that Indian soldiers were being thrashed by the Chinese army and claimed that the Indian media would not raise questions on this issue. According to the complainant, these statements defamed the Indian army and affected the morale of soldiers and their families. The Lucknow court had taken cognizance of the complaint in February this year, observing that the remarks appeared to demoralize the Indian army. Gandhi challenged this summoning order before the Allahabad High Court. In May this year, the High Court rejected Gandhi's plea, saying that freedom of speech did not extend to making defamatory comments about the armed forces. The High Court had also held that complainant might not have been aggrieved personally, but could still claim to be defamed by remarks made against the army. Today, a bench of Justices Dipankar Datta and A.G. Masih issued notice on Gandhi's special leave petition challenging Allahabad High Court's refusal to quash the defamation case. The court has granted an interim stay on the proceedings for a period of 3 weeks. Let me tell you, senior advocate Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi, appearing for Gandhi, argued that the complaint was politically motivated and that opposition leaders must be allowed to raise issues of national concern. He said that the statements were already published in the press and merely highlighted lack of disclosure regarding the border situation. But the bench was not entirely convinced. Justice Datta questioned why such remarks were made outside Parliament and on social media. He asked Singhvi how Gandhi could claim that 2,000 square kilometers of Indian territory were occupied by China without any credible proof. Justice Datta remarked, and I quote, "If you are a true Indian, you should not say all this." When Singhvi responded that highlighting the death of 20 Indian soldiers was also an act of patriotism, Justice Datta countered by saying that if it was unusual to have casualties on both sides in a border conflict. The bench also noted that questions of national security should be raised in appropriate forums, not through public statements, and might demoralize the armed forces. Singhvi criticized the High Court's view on person defamed versus person aggrieved. He also raised a procedural objection under Section 223 of the Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita, arguing that Gandhi was not given a hearing before cognizance was taken. But the bench pointed out that this specific ground had not been raised earlier. Despite granting interim relief, the court expressed serious concern over the nature of the remarks and indicated that such comments could have serious consequences, especially when made by a senior political leader. It's a common sight across India. Government welfare schemes often carry the names and pictures of political leaders. Banners, hoardings, even ration shops and school bags, all bearing images of chief ministers or prominent party figures. But is this practice legal or ethical? Can living politicians brand public schemes with their names? Well, now the Supreme Court is set to examine this question after Tamil Nadu challenged a Madras High Court order that restricts the use of names and photos of living political leaders in such schemes. The High Court's order being challenged here came in response to a petition filed by AIADMK MP C.V. Shanmugam, who objected to the use of Chief Minister M.K. Stalin's name in a public grievance redressal scheme named Mudalvarin Mugavari. The petitioner argued that use of Chief Minister's name and image amounted to political branding of welfare schemes using public funds. The High Court restrained the Tamil Nadu government from using the names or photographs of any living political personalities, including former chief ministers or ideological leaders, in welfare scheme promotions. The court cited the Supreme Court's earlier judgment in the state of Karnataka versus Common Cause, which held that only the photographs of the incumbent Prime Minister and Chief Minister may be published in government advertisements, and even that only to a limited extent. Today, senior advocate Mukul Rohtagi, appearing for the Tamil Nadu government, mentioned the matter before Chief Justice of India B.R. Gavai seeking urgent listing. Rohtagi said that the High Court's order is contrary to earlier Supreme Court rulings, particularly the one which allowed the use of Prime Ministers and Chief Ministers' photographs in government advertisements. He questioned why can't a welfare scheme be named after a leader who is actively governing the state. He emphasized that the schemes are aimed at helping the poor and such restrictions could hamper effective implementation and visibility. Taking note of the urgency, the CJI agreed to list the matter for hearing within this week. The outcome could significantly impact how government welfare schemes are branded across the country, particularly in states where ruling parties tend to prominently feature political figures. Do tell us about your opinion on this in the comment box. And now an update on one of India's most revered temples, Sri Banke Bihari Ji Mandir in Vrindavan. The apex court today questioned the Uttar Pradesh government's tearing hurry in promulgating the Sri Banke Ji Temple Trust Ordinance 2025, which proposes to take over the management of the temple through a statutory trust controlled by the state. A bench comprising Justice Suryakant and Justice Joy Malia Bagchi not only questioned the validity and urgency of this ordinance, but also took serious exception to the manner in which the state government obtained permission from the court earlier this year, that is on 15th May, to use the temple's funds for a development corridor project, allegedly without hearing the traditional temple management. Justice Kant did not mince words. He called the move clandestine and said that the affected parties, the Sevayats who have historically managed the temple, were not even heard when the state obtained permission to access over 262 crore from the temple's bank account. The dispute dates back to the differences between two sects of Sevayats or traditional temple priests who have managed the Banke Bihari temple for generations and are descendants of Swami Haridas Ji. Back in November 2023, the Allahabad High Court allowed Uttar Pradesh government to go ahead with the temple corridor project but restrained it from using temple funds. Then in May this year, the Supreme Court modified that order, permitting the use of temple funds to acquire land for the corridor on the condition that the acquired land be registered in the name of the deity. But this was done without giving notice to the original temple management. That judgment is now under challenge through a recall application. Today, senior advocate Shyam Devan, appearing for the temple's traditional managers, argued that the state's actions were nothing short of a takeover through the back door. Devan pressed for a status quo order, asking the court to maintain the existing structure of management until the legality of the ordinance is properly examined. Well, the bench today orally suggested two important steps. First, recalling the May 15th judgment that allowed use of temple funds for development, and second, appointing a committee headed by a retired High Court judge to oversee the temple's management until the High Court rules on ordinance's validity. The court made it clear that temple rituals would continue as usual and proposed that the committee should also include the collector, other local authorities, and possibly even the Archaeological Survey of India, given the historical importance of the temple. The bench today adjourned the matter to Tuesday and asked the Additional Solicitor General K.M. Nataraj to get instructions from the Uttar Pradesh government on the court's proposals. Meanwhile, the court said that it may relegate challenges to the High Court but will ensure that the temple remains under independent oversight until a final decision is taken. Can the family of a person who dies in a road accident caused by their own vehicle claim compensation under the no-fault liability insurance? That's the big legal question the Supreme Court of India has now referred to a larger bench, one that could have a major impact on how accident claims are handled across the country. Normally, under motor accident law, if someone wants compensation, they have to prove that the other person was negligent. That is, that someone else's mistake caused the accident. But Section 163A of the Motor Vehicles Act 1988 creates an exception. It allows for a fixed compensation based on a structured formula, even without proving any fault, negligence, or wrongdoing. But here's the catch. Several past Supreme Court rulings have held that this no-fault scheme only applies to third-party victims and not to the vehicle's owner or their family. Now, that interpretation is under serious reconsideration. This particular case before the court involved a tragic accident. A man and his wife were traveling in their own vehicle when a tire burst led to a fatal crash. Their minor daughter, who survived, filed a claim through her aunt before the Motor Accident Claims Tribunal under this section 163A. The tribunal awarded her over 8.5 lakhs in compensation for the loss of both parents. But the Odisha High Court reversed this award. It said that since the daughter would inherit her parents' estate, she could not also seek compensation under the insurance, essentially denying her claim. The appeal then landed before a bench of Justices Sudhanshu Dholia and K. Vinod Chandran of the Supreme Court, which took a different view. The bench said, when there is a valid insurance policy in the name of the vehicle involved in the accident, a claim under Section 163A covers every claim, not just third-party claims without any requirement of proving negligence. But the bench did acknowledge a deeper problem, that is conflicting precedents from past Supreme Court rulings. There are several two-judge bench judgments in previous cases that have held that owners or their families cannot seek compensation under Section 163A, limiting it to third-party claims only. But the current bench disagrees with that interpretation and pointed to a wording of the law itself, particularly the non-obstante clause in Section 163A. That clause says that the section will apply notwithstanding anything inconsistent elsewhere in the Act, hinting at a broader scope. Therefore, the matter has now been referred to the Chief Justice of India to constitute a larger bench that will finally clarify the scope of no-fault liability in such cases. Stay tuned as we track this important legal development. The Apex Court today strongly rebuked the conduct of 4 Punjab police officers who are accused of assaulting a serving army colonel and his son. The bench, comprising Justice Sanjay Kumar and Justice Satish Chandra Sharma, refused to interfere with the Punjab and Haryana High Court's decision directing that the investigation be handed over to the CBI. According to the complainant, who is a serving army officer, he and his son were beaten by Punjab police personnel at an eatery during their journey from Delhi to Patiala. This was because they allegedly refused to move their parked vehicle while having food. Shockingly, no FIR was registered for 8 days, despite repeated attempts by the officer to lodge a complaint. The officer eventually moved the High Court, citing a clear attempt by the state machinery to shield its police officers. The High Court first handed over the investigation to SP Chandigarh, directing that the probe be completed within 4 months. But even after this, there was no progress, no arrests, no visible action. This inaction then prompted the High Court to transfer the case to CBI on 16th July. The police officers then challenged this order of transfer before the Supreme Court, claiming that the High Court had indicted them before trial. But Justice Satish Chandra Sharma firmly said, and I quote, "When war is going on, you glorify army officers. And here, your SSP says that he cannot arrest the accused because they are police officers. 8 days to file an FIR. This kind of lawlessness is unacceptable." Justice Sharma also went on to say, "You sleep peacefully in your house because that man is serving at -40 degrees. And when they come back, they come wrapped in the national flag." The bench initially even considered imposing heavy costs on the petitioners, but refrained from doing so in the final order. The court agreed with the High Court's order to transfer the case to CBI.